The results were interesting to me and were actually less than expected as to when I first wrote the unit plan. We're doing genetics and DNA, right? So, before we really get into that, I want to know what we think when we see. My initial goal was to use the genetics and DNA chapter to explore the idea of eugenics and the positive global outcomes that could occur versus the negative consequences that could also occur if eugenics was put into the wrong hands of the public people or a public leader. I actually went into a different direction and talked more about race. Initially, I wanted the students to take the perspective from various subgroups of people. So we started with white and black rabbits. And with these white and black rabbits that were raised in the Himalayas, in essence, a few degrees of few degrees Celsius actually changed the gene expression and controlled the gene expression within the white versus white and black rabbits. So this was very, very interesting to me, and hopefully the students found it interesting as well. I tried to connect this gene expression with also the USA's history of racial discrimination, and I used that as the backdrop to sort of ignite feelings from the students. How I did this was I introduced a video that portrays a few African nations that have come together under the guidance of a Chinese railway system to develop their railway in Africa. In the 2018 Chinese New Year Gala, there was a large skit during this huge televised festival that had black women, black men, and Chinese men, and then it depicted a Chinese woman, a famous Chinese actor, painted in blackface. Now, I wanted to use this to make a link with the students, and I thought I could sort of dig deep to say, well, do you think this is offensive? However, I did not get the reaction from the students that I thought that would actually occur.
I think they are family because they say we are family and others, and they are dancing, sing, and do dress up, sing with the other person. We think that is nothing, but this is very important. It's a very serious problem.
This show is don't want to say that we with Africa the bad relationship. They only want to say we are family and we are friends, and we can communicate very well.
The following day I came back and I showed them a PowerPoint with different pictures depicting one of them was a whites-only swimming pool in the 1950s in the USA. And I expressed to them that all of us want to go swimming, but I'm the only one. It created quite a debate for the students because they started to feel bad because I was the one that had the benefit of going swimming in that public pool. And there are some other ones as well, but this one was really the turning point for the students to sort of, have more emotions and discuss with me how they felt with that. So they started to feel a strong negativity for the whites-only swimming pool, and then they sort of understood. But more so, they still dismissed the blackface skit as simply a joke. However, we continued to move on, and we prepared to watch a movie that was based in the future called Gattaca, and this is a movie that is about DNA verification and how it changes your entire life. Of course, this is in the future, but there are two groups of people, and they are either valid people with a good DNA structure or invalid people with a bad DNA structure. And the distinct groups of people are treated very similar on any kind of discrimination, specifically racial discrimination is sort of what we were looking at and how it was portrayed in the past. So I collected essays on this movie, and we talked about the different perspectives that the students took from whether or not eugenics is positive, because it can have positive outcome for people if it is in the right hands, but it can also have negative consequences if it's in the wrong hands. So that was part of what they wrote about. And they also took perspectives on whether or not this could be beneficial for the world, because it is advancing that far in science. And I wanted to see what the students had said. They do understand that if it does get into the hands, this scientific engineering gets into the hands of the wrong people, it can have extremely negative consequences. I also took information and notes from the students during the skit about the African and the Chinese railway system connection, and I was really surprised on what the students said, because they just passed off on the skit and they could not see how the skit could be discriminatory, or how someone could see it as a racial segregation or hurtful to someone else, and they simply passed it off as a joke. So I could not find a way to get to them, and it led me to dramatize the inequalities that have been treated for people other than white people, and showing the whites only swimming pool, which directly affected the Chinese students. Overall, I think the entire unit worked really well. Even though I believe I went to extremes, I also believe that the students began to react differently. However, I'm not completely sure if the students simply became compliant to what I was hoping that they would say, or they're actually starting to view various perspectives. This is something I can't really find out, but hopefully they did start to see the differing perspectives. I want to say that in the future, for anybody else tackling this topic, it's a very, very sensitive topic. Again, I have to say that China is not a very diverse nation. It is becoming more and more diverse, but for the students that I was teaching, they're international students, and they need this information, they need this body of knowledge to prepare to study abroad, and I believe it is beneficial for them. So, even though it is difficult to introduce, it's very important for them. While I was teaching, there were times where I felt defeated, there were times where I felt uncomfortable discussing with them, and there were times that I thought the conversation was one-sided, where I was on one side and the rest of the students were on the other side. And it was very challenging for me as an educator to continue talking and discussing with them, because I couldn't persuade them to see things differently. I think in the end they started to understand where I was coming from and what I wanted them to see, but initially it was completely flip-flop. So I do believe the students gained an advantageous viewpoint for their future, and I do think that they will use the information in the future. Kathy, what about you? You finished.
Same.
The same?
No. I say they are very stupid.
Alright, good. So we turned something that is, everyone said good, right? Into something that may be bad.
It's a way bad.
Sometimes. How do you feel about that?
No, it's I feel it's good, but the way bad.
The idea is good.